Hi Libra, welcome to your March 2019 Astro Alchemy with Rain and Moon. So Libra, what's happening in March is I think you're going to be channeling Virgo. Virgo is a ruler of the 6th house of work and health. And for you, the sign that represents that house is Pisces, the opposite sign of Virgo. And so because the sun is in Pisces for a good portion of the month, that is going to be the area of influence for you. The sun has a very strong pull. And so the month begins with the sun in that very practical sector. Mercury is there too, so you may be thinking about jobs. Maybe you're looking for a job and you're talking to different employers at workplaces. Because it is a house of health, Mercury rules that house in the sign of Virgo and deals with diet. So you may be looking at the food that you are eating and how that is contributing to your health. And on the first of the month, Venus goes into the house before it, into the 5th house. Venus is your ruler, and it's going into the 5th house of love and creativity. Venus obviously has a connection to love, but it also has a connection to the arts and to anything connected with beauty and harmony. And so this is a great position for artists, especially, well, I shouldn't say especially, but even with receiving monetary compensation for the art that you're creating, because Venus entering a house can produce some kind of financial gain. This could also be falling in love with somebody. You did have some activity in Aquarius, a new moon in February, in early February. So there may be something that is continuing with some kind of new romance. And on the 5th, Mercury goes retrograde in that 6th house of work at the critical degree, the 29th degree of Pisces. So something that you have really learned about or, researched. I think actually when Mercury retrogrades, it's a good time for research, but you may have already been talking about, reading about a particular health regimen or some sort of workplace issue you may have been talking about, and now it's time to decide what you're going to do. Again, if you have been interviewing with employers, this may be the time when you're waiting to hear back from them. So if you have interviewed with one or more people, Libra, don't be dejected if March is not the time that you get hired, because it's very possible that they will be held up in some way. Mercury retrograde, as you probably know, can produce delays wherever it lands. And in this case, in the 6th house, it's with workplace matters. And Mercury is also about contracts. So if there's any kind of contracts that you have to sign, especially if they're connected to work, definitely be very thorough about it. But it can point to there being confusion or some kind of snafu with that kind of paperwork. And so things may not go according to plan, but it doesn't mean that all hope is lost. On the very next day, we have 2 transits. One of them is going to be quite long-lasting because Uranus goes into Taurus. I should say back into Taurus briefly entered last May and now back for good, or at least the next 7 years. For you, Taurus is your 8th house, which deals with other people's resources, as well as sex and death and metaphysics. And if you think about metaphysics, death is right there, because it's like, what are we here for? What is the meaning of life? And Uranus is considered intuitive, and so it is connected to the occult in its own way. The 8th house can be the occult, and Uranus is that psychic ability. So you may get involved with astrology, the tarot, or just your own version of psychic explorations in the next 7 years. And some of these could be quite offbeat. Uranus is about being eccentric, and it's a planet that is associated with unpredictability. So in terms of money, this could mean a sudden inheritance that you are not expecting. So money situation, there could be wild gains. Of course, you could say wild losses, but the unpredictability factor can work on your behalf. And if you are partnered, this could be your partner's money, because this is the area of other people's money. So you may stand to gain just by being in a relationship with that person. On the same day, we have a new moon in Pisces in that 6th house. So this is what I'm talking about. If you are looking for work, this may be the month that you hear back. However, you may hear back after the Mercury retrograde. Mercury goes direct on March 28th, so maybe you hear back then. But this does bode well for people who are looking to change their health routines and their and their unemployment status. And by the way, just to let you know, I have heard that actually during a Mercury retrograde, it's a great time to lose weight or to go on a diet. So I don't like the term go on a diet, but you know what I mean, to start a new eating regimen. And one of the reasons they suggest that, because usually it is not, it's not something that is encouraged to do something new during, launch something new or start a new project during Mercury retrograde. But diet, they say it is okay because, first of all, Mercury, probably because it connects to diet itself, but also it's something that you can tweak. Because during a Mercury retrograde, if you start something new, you may have to go back and fix it. And with diet, that's not the worst thing in the world, because you're kind of experimenting with what is working. And if you observe that you're not losing as much weight, you might try something else and hit pay dirt, So anyway, for what that's worth. And on the 20th, we have another interesting situation because the sun is going into Aries. Now, Aries is your opposite sign, Libra. So even though Aries opposes you, it is compatible because it's in a compatible element of fire. So I think that in the last third of the month, you're going to start to feel more like yourself in a lot of ways. With the water energy of Pisces dominating in the first 2/3 of the month, it's really quite different than your air element. And so the fire element, they say fire feeds air, it expands air. And so this will probably really, I was going to say light a fire under you. But anyway, on that same day that the sun goes into Aries, and remember that this is an equinox period because it's going into a cardinal sign. So this is important for all of us in terms of the turning point. The turning points, one of the turning points of 2019. There's going to be a full moon in your sign at 0 degrees of Libra. So that is unusual. We've been having these 0 degree full moons in recent months. And to me, they operate more like new moons because usually the full moon brings things to a culmination. So the new moon starts things and the full moon ends it. But we have to look at degrees to see where it's at. And if it's at 0 degrees, it's like there still is something that is not expressed. Now, interestingly, there will be another full moon in Libra in April 19th to be exact. And that will be at 29 degrees. So we're going to have these bookends that are full moons at the very first degree of 0 and the last degree of 29. And so for Libra, running the gamut like this could be a very important 2-month period for you in whatever way it shakes out. Now, this particular situation involves the sun and in that 7th house. Now, of course, that will also be the case in April. So we're talking about the first 7th house polarity. The first house is the house of the self. This is where your sign is in. And so the 7th house is the relationship sector, which you rule in the universal chart. So being aware of your needs versus the relationship, if you're in a relationship, is what is highlighted at this time. And that can help you to see what needs changing, what needs adjusting. Again, I told you that Venus is in your 5th house. This is love like recent love. And the 7th house is more committed partners. So if there's any kind of marital situations that are coming up, when maybe you're separated and you've met somebody new and you're still committed to working on your marriage and you realize that you have to honor your needs, there could be all kinds of things that are going on where you see for yourself what maybe you have been sacrificing and how that has adversely affected your relationship. On the 26th, Venus goes into Pisces, and that's that 6th house. So Venus, your ruler in the 6th house, maybe you're starting to see results from a new diet that you've been embarking upon, and you see the physical results in terms of your looks. Maybe your looks have improved. Definitely with Venus in the 6th, the connection between beauty, being attractive, and health is evident, is being possibly seen, or at least you're investing in items, maybe expensive items that are helpful for your health, whether it's exercise equipment or, fancy kitchen equipment like, Vitamix. I always joke about Vitamixes. It can also be harmony at work. It could be getting a raise at work. So maybe that's what the negotiations were when Mercury was in the 6th house. On the 28th, Mercury goes direct at 16 degrees of Pisces. So something is resolved that is a workplace matter. Or you hear back from that employer by the end of the month, maybe. I don't know. Or going into April. On the 31st, Mars goes into Gemini, which is a fellow air signs. So it forms a trine, which is a nice angle. So this means that until the very last day of the month, Mars is in the 8th house, in that house of other people's money, as well as sex. So with sex, that could be quite frisky, because that means that you might have been very active, sexually active. Now, usually with the 8th house, we call it the house of spiritual sex. So I would imagine it would be with somebody that you have a deep connection with, not just random partners. But because it's other people's money, there could be some kind of a fight going on. This is the inheritance house. So that could be that I mentioned Uranus having entered that house. But there was the sun going into the 7th house, which can be lawsuits. And that could be connected in some way. So yeah, that's what I have for you, Libra. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like me to look at your natal chart, I have a natal chart interpretation, and I will link both of my natal chart interpretations. I also have love readings and combination with love and career. I think I'll just leave my link to my website below. Have a great month, Libra. Take care. Bye.